My goal here is to explain to you what Austrian economics is and distinguish that from the mainstream of economic thought, your typical average economist out there that you might see on television, might be working for the Federal Reserve or the Treasury Department, things of that nature. Austrian economics is the oldest continuous school of economic thought. It was essentially founded in 1870, but we date our roots back to 1730. So we're the oldest school of economic thought. We're actually also the smallest school of economic thought. There's probably 100 or maybe 1,000 mainstream economists for every Austrian economist today. And oddly, we are also the fastest growing school of economic thought. So we're the oldest, the smallest, and yet we're the fastest growing, and that growth has intensified in the last few years, largely due to the economic crisis. Mainstream economics, generally Keynesian economics, but there's other schools of thought out there as well. They use very complicated methods. They use elaborate mathematical modeling, supercomputers, laboratory rats, all sorts of things to try to predict the future of the economy. That's their goal, is prediction, and they're willing to use anything and go to any expense to come up with accurate predictions, even using unrealistic models about human behavior. The Austrians, on the other hand, have a very simple approach to economics of using logic and reasoning to try to understand human economic behavior and various economic processes. And while that's simple, it's not necessarily easy. We've spent several hundred years now trying to develop economics as a realistic approach to human behavior. And so what I'm going to do is look at about a half a dozen different aspects of our approaches to economics, our various views on economics, to try to distinguish the Austrians from mainstream economists. And this is very important for me in particular, because economists in public opinion polls actually rank lower than the US Congress. Okay, so we've got a reputation to build here. Let's look at the basic differences between success and failure in terms of economics and economies. The US, the United States, was a very successful economy, built from virtually nothing to what it is today, which is the world's largest economy. You can look at other countries as well, like Hong Kong, very, very successful. And then you can look at other areas which were not successful. Various African economies have fared very poorly. Many of the former communist countries fared very poorly, where the economies actually shrank over time. And then you can look in more recent times, and you look at China and India, which have gone from very low levels of economic development to the fastest growing economies in the world. Okay, so what explains that? Austrians, on our view, is that free markets in the economy lead to success. That private property rights, where individuals have clear title to their houses, their factories, their warehouses, their goods and services, that's also very important. People want to feel secure in their property rights, and if they do feel secure, they're willing to increase the amount of property. They're willing to save, they're willing to invest. We also feel that sound money is very important for an economy, so that the measuring rod in all exchanges stays stable over time. And so Austrians advocate a gold standard where gold coins and silver coins are the medium of exchange. And that medium is essentially stable over long periods of time, so that when we're measuring things, just like with a yardstick, we don't want the length of that yardstick changing very much, okay? Now, mainstream economists have a different view. They are very heavily into that regulation, that government regulation of the economy is essential to create a growing economy. They find market failures all over the place. They believe in a government safety net is important for economic growth, and they view things like the Federal Reserve or central banking, which controls the money supply as well as the banking system, is the key to economic success. So we disagree wholeheartedly with that approach, but that's the difference. The issue of prediction is very important for the mainstream economists. That's their goal, and it's a worthy one. Everybody wants to know the future. Austrians believe that you can't know the future with certainty. However, Austrian economists have successfully predicted all of the major economic crises over the last century. Ludwig von Mises, for example, the namesake of this institute, correctly predicted the Great Depression in a book that he published in 1928. F.A. Hayek also predicted it, who was Mises' student. Mainstream economists at the time thought we were in a new era of prosperity that would never turn back. The same was true for the stagflation of the 1970s. Murray Rothbard, who was the first academic vice president of this institute, successfully predicted the oncoming stagflation of the 1970s, where mainstream economists thought we were, again, in a new era. When we came to the tech stock bubble of the late 1990s, Austrian economists, by the dozens, were warning about the bubble and the crisis to come, while mainstream economists were predicting, once again, a new era. Because of technology, the only thing that they were worrying about was that the technology was going to put people, we wouldn't have anything left to do in terms of work. And then, of course, with the housing bubble and the current economic crisis, Austrian economists were writing about that in 2003, 2004, 2005, while mainstream economists were predicting a new era. You could never lose money in housing, they were telling us. Real estate prices never go down. So that's the story in terms of prediction. How about the cause of this economic crisis? Well, it's already been mentioned that Austrians view the Federal Reserve policy of setting interest rates at 1% in 2002, 3, 4 was the cause of this crisis. That low interest rates led to increased demand for housing,